It is 9:06 on a Tuesday morning. Got my coffee in my cool NASCAR mug. I'm gonna walk through Dearest One by Vonte Rogers. I got to produce the song. Had a lot of fun doing it. Yeah, today we're just gonna take a look at my Ableton session, just talk through some stuff. Yeah, so let's head over to my session and take a look at how I produce a song. Okay, welcome to my Ableton session. We're gonna start with vocals real quick. This main vocal right here, this is not what ended up on the record. That was recorded in a separate session that I created solely for vocal tracking. That one contains the main audio file that I sent off to be tuned, but this is just here as an example, and I produced a lot of vocal effects and whatnot using this main vocal. I'm gonna solo these out because we're gonna just take a listen to all of these and see what kind of the layers are doing. So as you can see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 vocal layers going on. 4 of them are high and low, and then these mid vox layers, these are just doublings of what the main vocal's already doing. Doubling just to make the vocal feel fuller. These layers kind of kick in at verse 2. The song is kind of a gradual build throughout the whole thing. So in verse 2 is where the dynamics kind of start to kick in and the song kind of begins to grow. So I wanted the vocals to reflect that. So if we listen to what verse 2 is doing, I've got these low vocals coming in.
My love is close the distance.
It's just an octave below. Panned 20% left and 20% right.
There's never space between us.
Just giving some reinforcement in the verse. The chorus is where really kind of the play kind of comes in.
Oh, dearest one, you're not on your own.
So you can see how those layers really kind of reinforce what the main vocal is doing. That's a good way, if you're ever tracking vocals, it's a good way to make them really kind of stand out, not get lost in the mix, and not feel super thin. Vocals can feel really thin if you're just working with one layer and you're trying to make that thing really pop. So as you can see, those just build out through the chorus, through the bridge. The bridge is where it gets really, really big. There's some cool interplay going on, switching off with the low vox layers coming in on this little phrase.
You're not on your own.
Cool stuff. I had a lot of fun doing that. This vocal effect, this is a very pitched down version of the low octave. So what you see here is just kind of doubled, they're panned wide. If you look at the sample, I pitched it down by an octave for this little phrase, and for here, because you're not on your own, and this, that kicks in, and then you're not alone. That stuff just makes for really cool vocal layering.
You're not alone.
You can kind of hear how beefy those phrases really get. I really wanted to capitalize on some of the key points of the song. The song carries a very important message, I feel, and I know Vonte feels it carries a very important message. So these vocals kind of doing that to drive home key points. Another way of thinking about, getting the message across by accentuating musically what the vocals are saying. Let's take a look at these effects now, these vocals effects. These two guys right here, what these are printings of a reverb that I used. So I've got this send channel labeled Vox Verb. All it is just Valhalla Vintage. Play, mix, fully high. This is kind of how I dialed it. All these channels they just grabbed audio from the Vox Verb and printed it. I chopped it, I spliced it, I layered it in there as I felt the arrangement called for it. So they're not very lyrical so much as just choiry, but let's just take a listen. Let me get that out of there. So yeah, these were a lot of fun. They're very transitional. They kind of fill up the the airy space. I really wanted those to be kind of the source of some airy top end for the song. The chorus sounds are very mid-rangey in it already. So having these vocals here to kind of add the air in the top end helped the song to not feel completely empty. They just added air where I felt the arrangement was missing it.
Dearest one, you're not on your own.
So yeah, that's kind of the vocals in all their entirety. I'm gonna start with the core sounds, which in my opinion are bass, this granulator, and this Rhodes. So we've got this Rhodes. This right here is just contact. It's the Scarby Mark 1. That's something that you kind of get with Native Select, I believe, or Native Essential. I don't know what it's called. Had it for such a long time. Knew I wanted Rhodes for this song. So that was kind of the starting point for this arrangement. So yeah, real dark, real smooth. You can kind of see down here all the processing that I did with it. I've got Kickstart. This is just a sidechain plugin. Kind of see over here where I programmed these to be more just short. So I use that to help kind of curb the tail of it. Auto filter, just cutting out a ton of top end. This EQ, taking care of a little bit of the mud. And then Valhalla Vintage. Granulator. This is possibly the most important sound in the song. That's this one. Now what this is Granulator 2. This is a Max for Live device that you get with Ableton Live Suite. And the sample that I dropped in here was a guitar sample from the initial arrangement of the song. There was a guitar loop that was just a repetitive chord progression. I dropped literally just the first note of that progression in a granulator, manipulated it, kind of how you're seeing down here, and that's how I got this sound. So that's really just a guitar sample in a granular synth. Very cool, very unique sound. This bass right here, this is from a plugin called Cycles by Slate and Ash. Cycles looks like this. So there's a wealth of presets in this thing. And I was kind of just clicking through it, looking for sounds to see what I could find. I stumbled across this bass. It sounds like this. Very swelly. Kind of gritty. Kind of got a little bit of almost flub, but good flub to it. But I heard that and I was like, that against the granulator. Perfect. The way they play with each other, I love it. These kind of three sounds made up the core of the core of what was going on with just the song as a whole. Let's move on to perks. These are all just samples, nothing too crazy. This snap that I used was an Ableton stock, just the simplest little snap. This guy I wanted to talk about. I labeled it as crinkle. It sounds like that. What that is was, yeah, another Cycles patch, similar to bass. Again, I was clicking through it. I think I stumbled across this sound at the same time I stumbled across the bass sound. But I heard this in Cycles and I immediately said, oh, okay, I gotta print that. Yeah, just chopped it, dropped it in there, and got a cool kind of papery sound out of it. I really wanted these drums to sound very organic, but also very papery, if that makes any sense. Kind of vinyl, kind of like a crumpled up piece of paper, and you're just playing with it. These claps are fun. All of these are literally my hand claps. I opened up my preferences, audio input, and I selected MacBook Pro microphone. And I just clapped like 6, 7, 8 times. And I ended up with 4 different samples that are layered on top of each other. Sound like this. So I ran those through an auto filter, erosion. You'll see erosion by Ableton all over this session. I love that. And then I'm gonna run through Valhalla Vintage. And then it hits erosion, so you kind of hear the distortion on the reverb tail. There's an auto filter, which there's a fill kind of going into the chorus, and that kind of opens up as the claps happen in succession, just to kind of do that, which laid against these toms that you see down here. Toms are nothing special. Ran through a little radiator, cut some low end and high end. A lot of the EQ that you see on this is not so much for mixing, so much as just tone shaping, which is very important for getting a solid mix later. You need to build arrangements with good tone shaping so that your elements are sitting where you want them, and then when you do send them off to be mixed. Let's just listen to these kind of all together. So you can see I got a lot of shakers in there, some like knocks, that crinkle sound, which I felt was very appropriate against all these claps, kick, toms. Pretty straightforward. Yeah, that's pretty much that. All of those are run through erosion auto filter. Not a ton of processing going on with any of these extra reverbs that you might hear on the record that came in mixing when I sent them off. Abel Kochi mixed this, did a great job. All right, let's talk about just these little effects real quick. This guy, and everything in here is all Ableton stock samples. If you just go into the browser and look for white noise or vinyl or risers, anything like that, you can find some cool stuff to just toss in there. So first up, we got this vinyl crackle. It stays pretty consistent throughout the whole song. This guy called the Alien Riser, because it sounds like laser beams. This cymbal 8-bit riser was a cymbal swell from an external sample library. It's just a simple cymbal swell. I processed it with Redux by Ableton to give it just some dirt and make it feel just bad, honestly. I would never use that in any other context but this. These risers are more Ableton stock stuff. This riser white noise is one that I use a little too often. Let's just hear what these risers sound like. Yeah, that's essentially all of these sounds. A lot of it was also processed by erosion. Like I said, that's kind of all over this session. It's just a cool, wide distortion thing. So synths look like this ARP, this pulse, glitch, drone. These were all made by another plugin by Slagh and Ash called Choreographs. That plugin looks like this. It's just a cool, like, movement-based synth. If you look into it, Choreographs is just a lot of fun to play with. So that makes this ARP, this pulse, and this glitch drone. This ARP is this little swelly thing that you hear in the choruses. You're at the back end of every bar. Just little chords, kind of arpeggiated, pretty randomly to make it feel like fireworks, like real kind of sparkly, I guess. And then it's littered in the bridge too. Yeah, so that's Choreographs. This pulse is also Choreographs. Nothing too crazy there. And then this drone, this glitch drone, this is just a single note that I MIDI programmed through that whole thing. I bounced all these to audio for the sake of audio is just easier to manipulate. So this glitch drone kind of sounds like a bumblebee. I don't really remember everything that I put on it. I just remember being very proud of that sound, very proud of all of these sounds. So if we kind of listen to these in context, these key sounds kind of made up the majority of the song. Next up, we've got this this is another granulator. Grabbed the uke pattern from over here. This guy. That little ukulele pattern that I recorded. Dropped it in granulator, and when you drop melodic loops into granulator, you get kind of a cool sporadic thing. So that sounds like that, and layered up against the ARP, also being very sporadic. It's this cool random drone of textural. There's a lot of movement, but then when it's tucked underneath, you can't really hear it in the final product, but it adds air, it adds movement in the top end. All stuff the song needed because, again, the core sounds very mid-rangey, very dark. So just little things to kind of bring out the airiness, bring out the top end in the song. Next up, let's look at kind of the real instruments that you hear in the song. I've got a ukulele, a very cheap ukulele that my dad gave me that I recorded into this in 6 separate channels. This lo-fi one I recorded straight into my pedal board, and what you hear on it, the vibrato, is coming from my JHS Emperor. So just, yeah, they're panned slightly to kind of double up against each other, give some movement to that. These ukes, there's a picked out pattern like I showed you over here. There's also this thing that you hear in the very intro of the song. This little strummed thing in the chorus. And then most of the strumming that you hear in the bridge is coming from here and here. 2 strummed ukuleles, panned hard, left and right. And then there's another little lead pattern. Very not perfect, but so this pattern reflects an EG pattern. This is the one electric guitar part that I actually wrote for the song. If you know me, if you've been following me long enough, you know I'm a guitar player. I didn't want to overdo the song with guitars. I wanted to just have a solid arrangement. So this is the one thing that I recorded to just kind of be tucked in there to, again, add some movement, but just have some fun with guitars. I didn't want anything shreddy by any means. And then these two, these EGs high and EGs low, are just strummed guitars. They kick in at the chorus. Crescendo into the bridge. And then at the back end of the bridge, the high EGs layer in. Real clean, a little bit of grit just because that's how I dial my amps. But then if you hear those against the ukes, you can tell a lot of that strummy movement is coming from the ukes. This acoustic guitar was that was a voice memo of myself playing that same pattern I was playing on EG, just on acoustic. Dropped that in here, chopped it, spliced it, bounced it to audio. Ended up with this reversed chopped and spliced pattern that I panned hard left against the EG hard right. You also kind of hear this littered in the chorus. You'll notice it's doubled up against kind of the swells coming from the ARP. Just in there, and it's in the intro too. but in the bridge, it's cool to hear it layered against the EG and the ukulele pattern. Fun stuff. This was a very fun song to produce. And then lastly, we've got strings are all Spitfire Labs. They kind of start as a drone in the second chorus, which I labeled as under strings, just to be a constant thing. I've got these that are more swelly, these are more symphonic, and then this cello layer underneath. Let's just hear the back end of the bridge. This layer on its own, this guy, this one, all panned respectively to make it as wide as possible, and then this cello. When you hear these all come together, the chords just that is how I produced Dearest One by Vonte Rogers. If you've not heard the song, go give it a listen. I will link it to Apple Music and to Spotify below. Go check it out. I'm very proud of it. I know Vonte is very proud of it. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.